I was working 3 jobs to support my family, thinking they needed my help. Then I found out they were living a luxurious life behind my back. So I did something unexpected. I was 16 when I first started at Joe's Diner, where the smell of grease and burnt coffee seemed to cling to my skin like a second layer. Back then, life was a balancing act on a razor's edge. Mom had just been diagnosed with MS, her body betraying her inch by inch. Dad? He'd already checked out, drowning at the bottom of a whiskey bottle long before I even realized what abandonment felt like. That left me and my little brother Tommy, who was just 10 and too young to understand why his world felt so cold. "Tammy, sweetheart," Mom would say from her wheelchair, her voice trembling as much as her hands, "you don't have to work. You should be focusing on your schoolwork." But I just smiled, kissed her on the forehead, and grabbed my apron. The textbooks in my backpack would wait for the few precious moments between shifts, when I could sit down and catch my breath. Poverty isn't just about empty stomachs or drafty rooms. It's a constant, suffocating weight pressing down on you, tightening with every overdue bill and every school expense you can't afford. I lived in fear of the phone ringing, bracing myself for another collector. And every time Tommy needed shoes, I found ways to make my portion stretch or disappear entirely. Dad would stumble home late, trailing the stench of cheap booze like a cloud. He'd leer at me from the kitchen doorway, while I painstakingly counted out bills at the table. "You're just like your mother," he'd mutter, slurring every word. "Always worrying about money. Life's too short, kid." Then, like clockwork, he'd collapse on the couch, leaving me to clean up the mess, whatever it was this time. By 18, my life was a patchwork of exhaustion, mornings slinging coffee and pancakes, evenings bagging groceries, weekends scrubbing strangers' floors. My grades barely clung to passing, but we survived. Tommy was growing up, Mom's medication stayed stocked, and somehow we kept going, until the day everything unraveled. I was restocking cereal boxes at the grocery store when a sound stopped me cold, a laugh. Not just any laugh but Mom's, only it wasn't the weary, pained chuckle I was used to. This was full and melodic, like it belonged to a stranger. I rounded the corner, curiosity tugging at me, and froze. There she was, standing, next to a car overflowing with organic produce, high-end cheeses, and wine bottles that cost more than my monthly pay. Her hair was styled, her clothes screamed designer, and not a single tremor betrayed her hands. Beside her, Dad was sober, polished, wearing a crisp suit I didn't even know he owned. "Don't forget we need more for the beach house this weekend," she said, tossing a $50 bottle of Merlot into the cart. "The Hendersons are coming." The beach house? The Hendersons. I felt like I was watching strangers wearing my parents' faces. Just that morning, Mom had been in her wheelchair, apologizing for being a burden. Now she was gliding through the store like she owned it. They paid for their haul with a gold credit card and packed it into a shiny black BMW I'd never seen before. I stood there in my threadbare sneakers and stained uniform, staring as they drove off, laughing like carefree teenagers. That night I couldn't bring myself to go home. I ended up at the park where I used to take Tommy when life felt lighter. My phone buzzed with messages from Mom. "Where are you? Tommy's worried. Please come home." Instead of replying, I opened my banking app. My stomach twisted as I stared at the meager balance. Every dime I'd earned from years of backbreaking work, every sacrifice, had gone to them. 3 jobs, no sleep, no future, all for their facade. Another text came through. "We need money for Tommy's school supplies." "Can you pick up an extra shift?" I snapped. All the love, loyalty, and guilt I carried for them turned into something sharp and unyielding. That's when I started digging. It didn't take much to uncover the truth. The beach house wasn't rented, they owned it outright. Dad's drunken, aimless act, a cover for his side business as a consultant. And Mom's MS, a performance so convincing it could have won awards. They orchestrated everything, feeding me lies to keep their golden goose laying. I sat on that park bench until the sun came up, watching the shadows of my childhood shift into something monstrous. Every sacrifice I'd made, every dream I'd abandoned, had been for them, for their greed. But I wasn't going to stay their victim, not anymore. If they lied to me, they lied to others, and I was going to expose every last truth. I started documenting everything, every lie, every hidden bank account, every fake doctor's appointment. My phone became a treasure trove of evidence. Videos of Mom walking effortlessly when she thought no one was looking. Photos of Dad holding court in expensive restaurants, while claiming he was at AA meetings. But it was Tommy who delivered the most damning revelation. One night as I checked on him before bed, he tugged at my sleeve. "Amy," he whispered, his voice barely audible, "I need to tell you something." "What is it, buddy?" I asked, kneeling beside him. His eyes filled with tears. "Mom and Dad, they make me lie to you." My stomach turned. "What do you mean?" Through choked sobs, he confessed it all. How they coached him since he was little, teaching him to act like we were poor whenever I was home. How they bought him 2 sets of everything. Shabby clothes for our house and designer outfits, for when they took him to their real life. How they promised him a car for his 16th birthday, if he kept their secret. "They said it was a game," he cried, "but it's not fun anymore." "I hate it, Amy. I hate watching them hurt you." I hugged him tightly, fighting back my own tears. His words shattered what little illusion I had been clinging to. This wasn't just about money, it was calculated psychological manipulation inflicted on both of us. The next morning, I called in sick to all three of my jobs for the first time in years. Instead of working, I went to the library, determined to uncover the full scope of their deceit. What I found left me reeling. Dad's consulting business wasn't just lucrative, it was worth millions. They owned properties across multiple states, beach houses, and condos I'd never known existed. Mom's medical records were spotless, no trace of MS or any other condition.